Good morning. Well, it's morning when I'm filming this. My gorgeous human being friends. I am so excited right now. I have a whole new setup going on this week for the No Food Rules news. I'm also slightly crossing my fingers, hoping that everything works as it should. We've got this very cool thing here. So, guys, I went down a rabbit hole recently with trying to figure out all this tech stuff with YouTube videos. It's a blessing and a curse. Like, part of why I love what I do is because I get to figure things out, right? Like, I don't know how to do something. I want to do it. I'll figure out how to do it. And that's like, it's such a feeling of accomplishment, and I love that. But at the same time, it causes a lot of meltdowns, and we definitely had some as I was trying to figure all of this out. So I would love to hear, if you are watching this, what your thoughts are on, well, you'll see a little, it might not look super different to you. It should look clearer than the previous system that I was using for these videos, the No Food Rule News ones. And then we actually have a lot more functionality that we can do, different little pop-up on the screen. I'm going to talk about, oh my gosh, we have so much new stuff going on today. So I'm going to talk about, actually, let me pause. We have a new segment that is going to be called Shit on Social. Shit on social media. Should I sell on social? I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are on the name. But I'm going to share an Instagram reel that I saw, and a lot of people sent to me. A lot of people were talking about, and we're going to talk about it. And then I also I thought this could be fun to do, pull a comment that I've gotten on one of my videos or one of my posts in the past week and just kind of chat about it. So we're going to do that. But if you're new here and you're like, what is this lady talking about? Hello, my name is Colleen. I am a non-diet registered dietitian, and I put out these No Food Rules news videos every Thursday where we talk about things that have been in the news. We have some studies going on, some pop culture. It's just a chance for us to chat about anything that might be a little bit more timely, things we might want to chat through in a little bit more detail that like a 60-second like Instagram reel isn't going to cover, or YouTube short. So if you're new, welcome. We are so excited that you are here. This is going to probably become one of your new favorite communities. Let me scroll all the way back to the top. Like I said, guys, please let me know, especially on this video, what your thoughts are on the like video and audio quality, because I am using a new system. And then also the addition that we have at the end here of the social media stuff. So I want to hear, my eyelash got caught. I want to hear your thoughts. So a couple reminders before we get started. So in case you missed it this week, look, I can just hit a button. How cool is that, you guys? I'm like so excited. If you missed it, I put out a new full YouTube video showing everything that I ate on our recent trip in Boston. I am not going to lie, you guys, I wasn't like super excited about our trip to Boston. Don't get me wrong. I knew it was going to be fun, but I was like, I didn't expect much from it. And it was such a good trip. It was like one of my favorite ones. And the food, oh my gosh, was phenomenal. I think it was the best food that we had on a trip. So if you have not watched that video, be sure to do so. It's right on my channel. It's the one that I posted before this. I posted it on Tuesday. Today's Thursday. And yeah, I also have in that video, I talked about a new freebie that I made. So this is essentially whenever I do full days of eating, I do them often. You guys love them. I love them. And actually the Boston one is like 3 full days of eating. My main goal with that is to walk you through why and how I make the food choices that I do. And this freebie, other way. There we go. That way. It's all the way backwards as I'm seeing it. This really spells out the 5 questions that I ask myself in order to make a food choice that makes my body feel good, that makes my soul feel nourished. So hopefully this will help with those full days of eating and not also make them like so freaking long, because I'm explaining a lot of times I do explain the same things over and over too. So I will link to this freebie in the description for you. If you haven't snagged it yet, I'd highly recommend doing so. It's going to be super helpful whether you're on vacation, everyday life. It's literally the process that I take to make food choices with no food rules. So I hope that is helpful for you, but that's what you missed this week so far. If you are just hopping in, this is the first piece of no food rules content that you are consuming this week. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. We have a variety of stories here. The first few are, we've got some studies that people put out, some very clickbaity things that we'll talk about. And then we have some fun ones to wrap up with. We got a T Swift story. I don't know if you guys have been, like, if you guys are into pop, I feel like you don't even have to be into pop culture to hear about Taylor Swift and what is his name? Justin something Kelce. Actually, it's probably in the story headline. The story's about Taylor Swift. Travis Kelce. Is that his brother, Justin? I don't know. Literally everywhere. Like all of the memes. There's so many things on social media. It's everywhere. And we have a story about it, but I promise it's not just about their dating. It's actually about food. So let's go ahead, my friends, and let's dive into our first headline here. Look, I just press a button and it pops right up. Guys, I'm like so in awe of this. I think it's like the coolest thing. So, okay, the headline says, processed junk foods you had no idea were once made by cigarette giants, from Oreos to Kool-Aid and Kraft Mac Cheese. So the article states a study earlier this month found that for decades, foods like Teddy Grahams, Hawaiian Punch, sold by tobacco giant-owned manufacturers, were up to 80% more likely to be ultra-processed than similar foods from non-tobacco-owned companies. These hyper-palatable foods, also known as ultra-processed foods, are filled with fat, sodium, sugar, and hard-to-pronounce additives, and have been linked to several long-term health issues like dementia and early death. Despite growing specific evidence regarding the addictive properties of these foods, there are no federal regulations addressing their accessibility. The state of the food environment for U.S. consumers bears a striking resemblance to the U.S. environment in the 1950s during the tobacco epidemic before the U.S. federal regulation. So essentially, this study is really correlating our processed foods with the previous tobacco marketing and addictive qualities. First of all, it is not the same in terms of how addiction, right? Addiction to a substance is not the same as addiction to food. I've talked about this many, many times on this channel. We can feel addicted to food, but it is not in the same physiological way with neurotransmitters and what's happening in our body as it is with a drug or a substance like that. It's not the same. So this study is kind of comparing apples to oranges, or this, study article. So that's the first thing. And it's a better comparison, or a more accurate comparison, to say we could also become addicted to petting our puppies or getting a hug, right? Anything that feels good and is enjoyable can elicit dopamine, a positive response, can make us feel good, and we want to do it more. That's what we're seeing here. So just a little bit about the addiction side of things. Now, I think that there's a lot of fear mongering going on in this article that is basically telling people, like, don't eat these processed foods. And there's some issues here. I do want to say first, before we, I don't want this to come across as always just bashing. I do think that in terms of marketing with processed foods, I don't agree with necessarily all of it. And there's one example that was coming to mind for me, and it is the one Snickers, where they kind of say, hungry, grab a Snickers. And there's nothing wrong with choosing a Snickers if you're hungry, not at all. But I think that that is misleading education, where I think that a Snickers is not going to be the most nourishing thing to our bodies. That's going to give us the most fuel. That's going to allow it to feel its best, right? Something with fiber, something with a little bit of protein in there is probably going to make us feel better. And I think that that's the kind of marketing where I'm like, okay, maybe like we are positioning some of these foods differently than what they are. I don't agree that those foods should be made less palatable or that we shouldn't be eating those foods. And here's the thing that really stuck out to me with this, you guys. Again, do I agree that eating these types of highly processed foods is the most nourishing thing? No, but here's the thing. Let me read you a little bit, a couple lines from the study. It says, a 2022 study from Northeastern University's Network Science Institute, for example, estimated that 73% of the United States food supply is ultra-processed. A study published found that more than 60% of U.S. caloric intakes comes from these types of foods. So I think one of the glaring things that is missing from this article is our food system and why it is the way that it is. And the reality is that these foods are typically the cheapest to produce, and with a growing population, some like having to sustain caloric intake for that population, it makes sense why the processed foods have grown and we are consuming more of those. So that part makes sense to me. And it's not shown in this study. And I think that, again, not something that's not shown is some people rely on these foods because that's all they have access to. Now, am I saying like, oh, that's fine, just like, eating those foods many times can be better than eating nothing, right? So I just think that there's a lot of social determinants that aren't being discussed here that absolutely matters. And I just think that, like I said, okay, food should be palatable, right? We want food to be enjoyable. And telling us that we should make food, we're making it too palatable is kind of like saying we're making Netflix shows too good or we're making books too enjoyable, right? We got to, let's make the puppies uglier, right? That's kind of what it is saying here. And I think that instead we should be focusing on education of, again, kind of like that Snickers example of proper education on what foods make our body feel fueled, what types of foods are going to nourish our bodies, what types of foods are going to nourish our souls. We need and deserve both. And helping people understand how to eat these types of foods in quote unquote moderation. And if you're saying, well, we can't do that because they're hyper palatable, yes, we absolutely can, right? Taste is not the only thing. And that's what I'm saying we need to focus on and that's why I made this channel, why I do the work that I do with my clients in the society is to help with this, right? To help you learn how to eat these foods and yes, enjoy them, because you know what? Having a slice of birthday cake that is full of sugar and fat and it's highly processed, that's part of enjoying life. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to miss out on that. And yes, you could say, well, we can make them with different ingredients. We can make them healthier. Yeah, but we can also enjoy them and still be healthy. And that's another thing that I think is important to know about this article is that when they say, oh, eating these things is going to cause all these health issues, they say like dementia, early death, heart disease. Don't forget, you guys, the dose makes the poison. If you eat a Cheeto, it does not mean that you're going to get dementia, right? What matters is your overall dietary intake. And I know that a lot of people think when I get rid of my food rules, I'm just going to want to eat all these things. And that's just not the case if we are listening to our whole body, because listening to our body also includes listening to our brains, right? So if we know that, okay, eating a Snickers every day for a snack might not make me feel my best, do I have access to, very important again, anything that might make me feel better? Something with some fiber, something with some protein, maybe some produce for a little bit of micronutrient punch, right? So I just think that there's so many things. And that is a very scary headline of like, oh my gosh, like the tobacco manufacturers are in our food system making this stuff the next tobacco. And I just don't think that's the case. So I hope that explains a little bit about that, because like I said, scary headline, but when you actually peel back the layers of the onion, hopefully that helps understand and what we should be focusing on, because we know time and time again, when we restrict something, it's going to make us want it more, right? If I say, don't think of a pink elephant, you're probably going to think of a pink elephant, right? Same thing with food. We say, don't eat those foods. And then that also causes guilt, shame for the people who only have access to those foods. What if you are catching even if it doesn't even have to be your like socioeconomic status, right? It could be you are going from, you're catching it when we went to Boston, right? Literally all I kind of had access to was processed foods at a few points, because I was like, I just have to take something with me. I have to grab something on the go. And if I wouldn't have done that because these foods are not healthy enough, I would have been ravenous and I probably would have binged, which also isn't healthy, right? So there's just so much nuance to that. But the next one is also another study. All right, guys, story number 2 here that we have. The headline says, depression risk spikes for those who eat these unhealthy foods. Study finds it's not a coincidence. So let's talk about this. It says that a new study published in the journal JAMA Open Network found that eating ultra-processed foods, the foods that we were just talking about, can contribute to a higher risk of depression. Researchers found that more than 31,000 women between 42 and 62 years of age, they analyzed their dietary choices and their mental health. And it says all participants filled out a food questionnaire every 4 years disclosing whether they ate ultra-processed foods or not. So essentially, this study claims that consuming more than 9 servings of processed food per day was correlated with depression. Now, one thing I always talk about when we talk about studies is this study showing a correlation or is it showing causation? Okay, so for this example, they are showing a correlation, not a causation. So it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? That's one thing to think about. So when you're feeling depressed, you're probably more likely to reach for those sweets or the ultra processed foods, whatever that is. I'm a sweet tooth girly, so that always comes to mind for me. But we're more likely to go for those things, right? So I think that we have to think about like, okay, are you showing, again, the chicken or the egg? Did the depression come first and that's why they're choosing those things? Or are they choosing those things and it is causing the depression? Honestly, I lean towards, first of all, if our bodies aren't nourished appropriately and we're not getting all the nutrients that we need, yes, things are going to be wonky and that can include your mental health. But that's one thing to think about. We also have to think about the people who are feeling more depressed. Do they have higher rates of depression because they have less access to going to therapy or getting resources to help, right? And also, if they have lack of access to that, they may also have lack of access to fresh foods. I just think that social determinants are just stuff that are not talked about enough in any of these studies or even considered. And they're a huge, huge part of our health. So I just thought those were interesting. And the study literally also does say, it lists its limitation because this was an observational study, not a controlled one, and it's not a certainty that ultra-processed foods were the determining factor in the depression. So, like, again, case in point, scary headline, not actually what the study says. So, hopefully we cleared that one up. The next one that I want to talk about here is, it's titled, the next story, middle-aged women spend less than 5 hours a week on their own needs, self-care, and hobbies. And I chose this one because I feel like these first 3 stories have kind of like led into each other. So we talked about processed foods and we talked about processed foods and depression. Now I want to talk a little bit about depression here for a second, because this study says middle-aged women spend less than 5 hours a week on their own needs and hobbies. And instead they are caring for children, aging parents, leading them to an emotional tug of war, which leads to burnout and exhaustion. So the thing that I wanted, this is actually like something I've been unsure of how to talk about this, or like how to approach it. This is personal for me. So I am under a period of a lot of stress. I am doing I hate to be the type of person who's like, I'm doing a secret project. I'm doing a secret project. And I'll tell you guys about it as we get there. But from now until really the end of October, I have no work-life balance. And I realize that's a situation, I actually talked about this in therapy yesterday, a situation that I'm putting myself in. I am willingly sacrificing it. That's not to say you should do this. It's right or wrong. This is just my own reality. And the past few weeks have been very, very tough. And I'm like, I'm just in the thick of it. And one thing I am able to realize is that this is a time period. This is not a chronic thing. And I'm going to make sure it is not a chronic thing. So I just kind of wanted to a little bit talk about the difference between chronic lack of self-care and more temporary lack of self-care, because the reality is we're not always going to have the ability to pause or to do less, right? Think about a new mom who just had a baby. She doesn't probably have the ability to be like, oh, let's just press pause on this for a week and give myself some self-care. Literally might not be able to happen, right? So whatever your reality is, I think it's important to notice if it's chronic lack of self-care, which then we need to think about, okay, like we need to make some changes, or is it something that this is just my circumstance? How do I handle it knowing it's not going to be this way forever? I definitely have noticed, specifically in the past few days, I was like, I'm just drawn to sweets more. Like it is a coping mechanism. My body is craving some enjoyment, craving some soothing. And I have noticed that I have been wanting more of those things. That's not bad. That's not wrong. I'm not judging myself for it. But I was like, okay, I think this is correlated to my lack of self-care, right? So being aware of those things, I think, is super important. And that's really what I wanted to touch on with this article. I do think that we have a huge issue just in terms of like women and our expectations on what we can do. We always hear, and I also never want to contribute to that. So people, me saying like I have no work-life balance, that is not a good thing, right? And I am actively trying to avoid getting into the situation in the future. And sometimes I think on social media it is very much so like a badge of honor to be a hustler and to, do all. It's just bananas that we expect that we can do everything and we should do everything. So maybe just take a moment to audit your own self-care, your own hobbies. One thing in the past week that I have done, a week ago, I went to my first book club, and I feel like that's something. Work is my hobby, and again, I'm trying to get myself out of that. And so also like, yes, your own self-care, but asking yourself, do I have anything that brings me joy just for the sake of doing it, right? I've also previously taken a pottery class, reading, things that like maybe necessarily baking aren't like productive, but that you enjoy doing them just as kind of like I call them brain breaks. But I just thought that would be kind of a good thing to just touch on today. I promise. I know we started off with 3 really kind of like heavy hitting stories, like emotionally and very, not necessarily the most fun stories, I guess. These next 2 are fun. So story 4 says, Kraft Mac and Cheese brings back, I'm going to have to remember to do this. Yeah, baby. Okay. Kraft Mac and Cheese brings back beloved shape for its return. On September 26th, Kraft Mac and Cheese announced it's welcoming back fan favorite SpongeBob SquarePants. Did anyone else eat this? To be fair, I only ate this like when I went to friends' houses. We never actually purchased it. I really always wanted it, but we never got the shapes. We always just had the regular ones. But I lived vicariously through my friends' houses, and I love this. And I thought that, so this is going to roll out in October. I'm so here for this, you guys. And what I wanted to talk about with this one, hello, 90s kiddos, like get ready to live your best life as an adult. I'm so excited. But also the fact that for me, talking about like how excited I am about this shape, I do think it's one of those things where it's like a small change, but like my satisfaction and enjoyment with mac and cheese when it's in a SpongeBob shape or any shape, to be honest, skyrockets. It can even be done with like shells. Like that's not even a crazy shape, but that changing up one thing, two things, changing up one thing, like the shape of a noodle, you could literally make the same dish, but if you change up the shape, it's going to increase your mindfulness, which is going to increase your ability to listen to your fullness, your satisfaction, because something is different. So that's one tip I wanted to give you guys, was to try to do a little bit of changing something up with your meals, even if it's literally the same thing in a different shape, different color, different texture, anything like that. And then also with this, having satisfaction in your meals, so changing something, but also having it be something you enjoy, is also going to have that same effect, where we allow ourselves to be like, wow, this does, satisfy me. Maybe we don't need to eat the whole pot, of if we make, you can eat the whole thing, but maybe we realize, hey, I'm feeling full and satisfied, so I don't need to continue eating, because this has hit the spot for me. I've truly enjoyed the experience. And this is also why, going back to the first story, I don't think food shouldn't be palatable, because if we're like, I'm waiting for myself to enjoy this and to feel satisfied, we're going to keep wanting to eat until we eat something to hit the spot, right? That's actually going to satisfy us. And it's about learning how to identify that and how to do that. So yeah, I was just super excited about that article. What's your favorite shape of mac and cheese? Let me know in the comments. Like I said, I just think that fun shapes are just, what other mac and cheese shapes have they had? I know dino chicken nuggets, that comes to mind as something shaped, but are there any other characters that, did they do dinosaur mac and cheese? I don't know. Let me know what you guys grew up eating, but I just thought that was fun. Okay, our last story here before we get into our new little segment about shit on social. I think I can say shit on YouTube. I don't know. We'll see if they ding me. But story number 5 is about our girly T Swift. It says Taylor Swift fans are obsessed with her eating chicken tenders and seemingly ranch at Travis Kelce's game. So Taylor Swift was spotted eating chicken tenders while cheering on Travis Kelce from his suite during Sunday night's football game. A fan went on to say she was eating seemingly ranch. I don't know why. Is that a phrase kids say these days? Seemingly ranch? I don't know. Anyway, she's it seems like ranch. I don't know. I'm not hip and cool with the lingo. Moral of the story, your girl was eating chicken tenders with ketchup and ranch. So first of all, love that we are seeing people eating these things, right? Those hyper palatable foods. It's okay to eat those, right? It's okay to eat those. We've gone over that. Now, I do think that one thing that came to mind with this story was, would the headline be different if this was someone in a larger body? Because this article comes across very much as oh, do it, it's fine. But I feel like the instant someone in a larger body does it, and that just shows our society's fat biases and fat phobia. That was one thing that kind of came to mind. So you can eat the chicken tenders, whether you are in a thin body, whether you are in a larger body. Chicken tenders are not going to determine your health. Can they impact it? Yes. Is eating chicken tenders in a normal, non-bingy, non-guilty, overall balanced diet way absolutely fine? Yes. Yes, it is. And I also love this story because Taylor Swift, there's one, I never watched her documentary. If you guys have, do I need to watch it? I'm not the biggest Swiftie. I like her music, but I'm not that I don't want this to come off wrong, and Swifties don't come after me. It's not that I'm not a big music person, right? So I didn't honestly care about her tour because I don't care about concerts. I'm just not a big music person. But one thing that I did see a clip of in her with the documentary that she did was how she says when she has the thoughts, she struggled with disordered eating, and when she has those thoughts, she says to herself we don't do that anymore. And I just thought having that self-talk with yourself of, I understand that used to be a coping mechanism, controlling my food, controlling my body. trying to be as thin as possible used to be what we do, but we don't have to do that anymore. So I also thought this was just like nice from the disordered eating side of things to be able to see this progression where it can be just so normal, where you're enjoying the amazing things of life, watching football with your maybe not new fling, boyfriend, whatever, and enjoying the foods that go along with it. Like, you don't have to chew carrot sticks when you're there, or, have, unbreaded, unfried chicken tenders. You can absolutely eat the regular old chicken tenders with seemingly ranch. Okay, guys, those are our news stories. Now let's get into our shit on what are we going to call this, guys? Shit I saw on social. I don't want it to sound like we are like shitting on social media, but it's the stuff that we saw. So let me know if you guys have any good names for this. But the first thing that I want to talk about is the Mel Robbins reel that was going around. Like I said, a lot of you guys sent it to me. I saw it. A lot of dietitians have been talking about it. And the cool thing with this new little deck thing that I got is we can play it. So I will play a little bit of it here for you. First of all, I typically like Mel Robbins for her motivational, like inspirational content. This I saw and I was like, oh, we did not nail that one. Roll the clip.
On simply limiting these 3 foods.
Good oils, not bad oils. Good oils are avocado oil, olive oil, sesame seed oil.
What are the bad ones?
The bad ones are canola oil, cottonseed oil, corn oil, partially hydrogenated oils, sunflower oils.
They're saying
they cause
don't
your
have
cells
these
to
bad
swell.
oils.
And when your cells are swollen, your cells are not able to pull in nutrients and hormones. Second one, nature's carbs, not man-made carb.
Okay, we get the gist. I'll link to the whole thing in the description if you want to give it a full watch. But we, again, like we've said, when we say we can't have foods, we want them even more. The stuff that she's saying, first of all, is not based on science. So let's talk about that for a second. Just 2 quick things that I didn't even have to search very hard for. This study published by Harvard showed that omega-6s from these oils that people once thought caused inflammation are actually beneficial to our health and actually improve inflammation markers and cardiovascular health. Then this systematic review of 15 clinical trials failed to find any evidence showing that this type of diet consisting of these vegetable oils causes inflammation. So like debunked, right? This is not based on actual science. So that's like the first red flag for me with the oils. First of all, we should mention that this person's a chiropractor. They are not a dietitian. Doctors, other medical professionals do not have the expertise in nutrition that registered dietitians like myself do. It's kind of like saying, I know how to brush my teeth, right? So I can be a dentist. Just because you do something in a category doesn't make you an expert in that category. So the oil thing is just bogus. They also say that we should avoid man-made carbs. Again, so she labels things like breads, cakes, pastas as bad carbs, gives no explanation as to why. Maybe in the full podcast episode she does, but carbs are our body's preferred energy source. Again, are the super processed ones going to be the most nourishing? No, probably not. But that doesn't mean they're bad. Some people only have access to these. It doesn't mean we can't eat them and not still be healthy and have an overall balanced diet. And the last one, this one gets me. It says, consider what she can avoid foods that she considers toxins, artificial sweeteners, and coloring. And we don't have the research to back this up. And people always get pissed at me when I say the amounts of these colorings that are in our foods are regulated. We go based on studies and we make sure that the amount that are in our foods is lower than the amount that could potentially cause someone to have an adverse effect. They are regulated, and let me explain this. They're banned in other countries. Those countries use a different approach. There's a hazard-based approach, and I explained this on Instagram recently, and I can link to that Instagram post that I did in the description of this as well. There's a hazard-based approach and a risk-based approach, right? So if something could potentially, the other countries, they're saying like this potentially in a high dose, higher than someone would typically consume, could cause harm. We need to not have it, or we need to have some sort of a disclaimer for it. The US takes the approach of, okay, this food in high levels could potentially cause harm, but when we eat it in quote unquote normal quantities or these regulated quantities, it's not likely to cause harm, right? So there are two different approaches. So the whole argument that because food ingredients are banned in one country means that having them in our food is unhealthy is absolutely not true. They're taking very, very different approaches to food regulation. So again, and also ingredients that you can't pronounce, like if I should have put a slide on this showing you the breakdown of like an apple of what that looks like everything is made up of chemicals, right? Am I saying whole foods? This perfectly leads us into our next one here. Am I saying whole foods are bad? Absolutely not. But am I saying we should eat processed foods all the time? Absolutely not. But is fear-mongering these things going to be more harmful than helpful? Absolutely yes. Okay, here's our last little tidbit that we have today. This is an Instagram comment that I got that says, since when is eating real whole foods called dieting? Laughing emoji, laughing emoji, laughing emoji. That isn't even food that you're showing. It's processed chemicals and sugar. I think I was showing like cereal here or something like that. Same sentiment as what I just said. Eating real whole foods is not called dieting. Absolutely not. And this also shows me that this person didn't actually watch the video because it was just not it. I actually said like, oh, eating this food all the time probably doesn't feel good, so I'm going to go make myself a fruit smoothie. Girl, you didn't watch the whole thing. But regardless, it's not called dieting, and I'm not telling anyone they can't even desire to eat mostly whole foods. That's fine. Also, has anyone noticed that when you type whole food into your phone, it autocorrects as like Whole Foods, like the store, and it always capitalizes it? It drives me bananas. But yeah, your whole foods are also chemicals, and something being processed does not make it junk. Your bagged spinach is processed. Your protein powder is highly processed, right? So we can't just say those things are bad. So hopefully that clarifies that comment. But anywho, guys, so let me know what you thought. That brings us to the end of today's No Food Rules news. I'd love to hear what your thoughts were. I have some kinks to work out on this whole new system that we are using, but I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you liked it, if we liked the little segment at the end, and what your thoughts were. If you did like it, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, all of the things. These come out every Thursday, and I hope you love it, and I will see you on next week's. In the meantime, be sure that you're following on social at no.food.rules. If you ever see any articles or anything that you want me to cover on these, shoot me a DM. I would love to cover them for you. So can't wait to hear what you guys think, and I will see you in the next episode. See you later.